Okay, hello everybody. So this is our third tutorial, and today we have a guest speaker called Wesley, who's the Senior Electrical Engineer for Islington Borough Council, who's going to go through a presentation first on about his jobs, the skills that you need in order to be an electrician. And then afterwards, we're going to do a Q&A on about how he got to be where he is now. But during the presentation, we'll be pausing where you can go back through the different things that we've just talked about and ask any questions, which we have Matt with us today again, who will then be reading your questions from the chat to ask Wesley. So I'm going to now pass you over to Wesley.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
We can hear you great.
Fantastic. Okay, so my name is Wesley Carlisle Goldthorpe. I hope you all can see me okay. I'm Senior Electrical Engineer with Islington Council. I've been working as an electrical engineer for pretty much all of my working life. I started when I was 17. And I've been working for Islington for about 4 years. This presentation is going to look at the electrical industry in practice, and it will look at routes into work, roles and responsibilities, what employers are looking for, and types of electrical systems in a council. So, where does electricity come from? Now, in the United Kingdom, gas and electricity is provided by the National Grid. And I've put together here a map from the National Grid's website, what the UK network is. And we can see here there's the pink is the gas, and the blue is the overhead power lines, which run at 400 kV. So the National Grid used a step-up transformer at source to distribute electricity to the network at up to 400 kV. Now this shows the journey from the power station to the point of use. So we can see that the source of energy, the power station, from the power station, we then have a step-up transformer. So the energy will be stepped up to 132 kV or higher, or up to 400 kV. The electricity is then run through across the country, across the National Grid, in overhead power lines. Then, when it comes down to the point where it is to be used, the load positions, it's stepped down via a transformer. So you'll know this yourselves, I'm sure, from a transformer. You'll have a set of windings on a transformer on the primary side and the secondary side, where you can either step up or step down your electrical the rate of electricity. And then it's distributed into the home at 230 volts, which is single phase supplies, into light industry, which is at 11 kV, and that would be a 3-phase supply, or into heavy industry, which would be at 33 kV. So examples of the sources of electricity. Well, these are fossil fuels. 67% of our electricity is provided from non-renewable source. We have coal at 41%, natural gas at 21%, oil at 5.1%, renewable energy at 16%. So renewable energies are hydroelectric, wind, geothermal, ground source pumps and so forth, and solar. And then nuclear power, which is at 13%. How do we use electricity? Well, in daily life, we use electricity in our homes, outside, street lighting, for example, when we use public transport, when we go to the shops, the cinema, libraries and gyms, and of course at college and at work. So let's look at the types of roles in the electrical industry. Now, this is key to me. It's all about specialising. So is anyone thinking of working in any of these areas? So an electrical apprentice. So, for example, you might want to leave where you are now and start work straight away and find an apprenticeship. You might want to do some training that would lead you up to an electrician. And then the different roles there are in the industry, such as the electrical technician, an AutoCAD draftsperson, somebody who does drawings, a quantity surveyor, an electrical engineer, a site supervisor, electrical contracts manager, a wireman, an LV jointer, or a manager and a director. These are all people who work in the electrical industry. These are all people who potentially would have electrical engineering qualifications. Are there any questions about these roles?
It's really interesting, Wesley, because actually we have a unit on AutoCAD, which I think is quite popular that we do. And also I was thinking, you know, again, we have lots of students who want to do apprenticeships, and becoming more and more popular is doing quantitative surveying.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I've got one question here that's come through so far, regarding if you will be sharing the presentation later on, if it will be available to share.
Well, we're recording
Yes.
it, aren't we?
We are, and Aaron has just asked specifically if the PowerPoint presentation itself would also be available.
Yes, we can make that available.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, shall I continue?
Yes, please.
Okay. So let's have a look at, so I'd like to talk now about hard skills and soft skills in the workplace. So I'd like to talk now about hard skills and soft skills in the workplace. So examples of hard skills are technical competence, understanding electrical circuits, knowledge of the industry and the markets, so the supply chain is what I mean by that. The ability to use specialist software such as AutoCAD, but there are other types as well that are used. Organizational skills, so how we organize and structure our workflow and our daily lives, and writing reports. So there's technical reports is what I mean by that. These are all hard skills. These are all tangible things that we have to do to bring to the workplace to say when we were employed, this is what we can do. So examples of soft skills needed in the workplace, specifically for electrical engineering, but it could be more broadly as well, I would say. Communication skills. So by communication, we mean listening, talking, writing emails. There are other forms of communication as well, how we present ourselves. We have verbal and non-verbal communications as well, for example. Respecting others, how we communicate with our colleagues and again with people through the supply chain, having respect for the works that they do. Letting people know what you're doing. So I've put that in because I think I work as a manager, and what's key for me is understanding what the guys in my team are doing. If they go off and just work off on their own initiative, it's great that they're working on their own initiative, but you know, I need to know what they're doing. And understanding hierarchies, so understanding the chain of command, as it were. So you know, making sure that you let people know what it is that you're doing, what actions that you're intending to take. You're considering the implications of any that there might be to any cost and that sort of thing. So what qualifications do I need to get started as an electrical engineer, or more broadly speaking, with a role in the electrical industry? So I had a look through the marketplace myself to see what starter positions qualifications the industry is asking for before I put this presentation together. And yes, you know, it's possible to get an apprenticeship with GCSEs. That's the sort of minimum requirement that the employers are looking for. They're also asking for City and Guilds qualifications for more specific qualifications in engineering as an HNC, a High National Certificate, or an HND, a High National Diploma, or a bachelor's engineering degree. So routes into work in the electrical industry. So broadly speaking, how I see this is you could go as an apprenticeship. So you could go directly from where you are now into a position as an apprentice. You could go from college straight into work as well. That's another route potentially there for you. You could go from where you are now into university, and then from university into a position, and that would provide you a graduate entry role. So JTL, training people. Now I've put this in to the presentation because I wanted to show you the training scheme. So JTL, it's called joint training. Yeah, it's a partnership between sort of plumbing and electrical industry, and they offer direct training or routes into apprenticeship. So if you wanted to get an apprentice, this is a really good place to start. So you could get in touch with the JTL organisation, put yourself forward and ask to speak to them, tell them that you're interested in an apprenticeship. And you can see here there are, it's for employers, and it's also for traineeship programs, how to apply. I'm not going to go into all of this. You'd need to speak to them yourselves, but this is a very good place to start in terms of getting an apprenticeship. And in fact, I would expect that most apprenticeships in the electrical industry, certainly as electricians and possibly above, would start off with as a JTL schemed electrician. In fact, I started in the industry doing a JTL scheme electrician as a JTL apprentice electrician. So another good place to start is with recruitment agents. So I had looked through Reed and Hayes are good places to start, and I had a look at these three before putting together this presentation, and I had a look at Indeed's website for apprenticeships, and you can look through here, and some came up pretty much straight away. So if you type in here something like apprenticeship.
Sorry, Wesley, we're unable to see other screens, only your presentation.
Thank you. Okay, that's a shame. I didn't know that before. No worries. Okay, so they're good places to start as well. So we're back on that. Can you see that screen again now? You can see
so
the
we're just on your presentation.
Yeah. You're still on the presentation. You've not moved away from that, I see.
No.
I understand. Okay, so places where electrical engineers work. So electrical engineers will work in the public sector, the private sector, and the armed forces. Sorry, I'm just going to go back just to finish the point about the recruitment agents. So you can go to these are good places to start with in terms of trying to source an apprenticeship. Start with the JTL scheme. Go to recruitment agents as well. Ask to speak with recruitment consultants who specifically have clients looking at in the electrical industry, electrical contractors, consultants, and main contractors and so forth, and just tell them that you're interested in getting a role as an apprentice, as an apprentice, and what opportunities are available. Do not be perturbed if they say there aren't any. But ask them who are their clients. Ask them. Try and get some information from them about where you might be able to go yourself to put an application through. Persistence pays off. So places where electrical engineers work, we work in the private sector, public sector, and the armed services. So by the public sector, we mean working for a council, a university or central government, transport, Network Rail, Transport for London, those sort of organisations. All of these places need to have electricians. We have electricians to do, or electrical engineers through that supply chain to install, to maintain, to replace. There's a constant flow of a requirement for the role. In the private sector, Matt.
No, I'll let you finish. I've got some interesting questions coming through that I'd like to ask you after you finish this slide, please.
No problems. So private sector, private firms, small to medium businesses, consultancies, etc., etc., and armed services. The Army, the Navy, the Royal Air Force. So we work on construction sites, we work in people's homes, we work in offices, we work in manufacturing, we work in heavy industry. So, for example, power stations, oil rigs, that type of thing. Matt.
So some of the questions were relevant to what you have been previously talking about sort of the pathways to get into this this career. So I thought it's relevant to bring them up now. So Spencer asks, if it is better to in your opinion, in terms of becoming qualified to develop a career here, to go via the degree route or via the apprenticeship route?
Okay, so both routes are valid. If you go through an apprenticeship route, you have the advantage of having very detailed training very early on. So you learn how to do that work on that basis. So you're very practical in the way that you're applying your work. If you go through and therefore you become useful as being able to sell your services into the workplace very early on in your career. Okay, if you go through an engineering route, so you do an engineering degree, you're then very well qualified, much better qualified than you are in some respects. You're better qualified than you are if you're working as an apprentice, but you're less able to sell your services directly into the marketplace. You've not gained from that level of experience. So it's a trade-off. But if you stop training, if you stop learning and you just do, then you stay where you are. So it's up to you as an individual to push yourself forward and to progress all of the time. And in actual fact, I've come across lots of electrical engineers with B-Eng and even M-Eng qualifications who have gone back and in order to get themselves started at work, have had to go back and do City and Guilds qualifications and have actually carried out practical works. So they've gone back, but it's all good experience.
Fantastic. I have a follow-up question to that, if that's okay, which is a nice little follow-on actually from what you were just saying, and it is, what was your route? I've got Janice asking whether you studied at university or whether you did an apprenticeship.
Both. I did an apprenticeship, and then I went to university after having worked as an electrician for a few years, and I pushed myself and I got a job as an electrical project engineer about 20 years ago, and I've been working as a sort of engineering manager for that period of time.
Fantastic. And final question before I let you move on. What roles in the military specifically? You mentioned about sort of places where electrical engineers work. Maybe I'm preempting something you will say, but what roles in the military, Aaron's asking, would use electrical engineering?
Okay, that's a very good question. And electrical so you could work. Engineering in the military, in my limited understanding of it, is more broadly based. So they would do more sort of civil work, such as buildings, building bridges, for example, or repairing tanks, or and that sort of thing. But they certainly have electrical engineers in the military as well. And the Institute of Engineering Technology, in its professional registration capacity, when they have a section in there for military personnel to use as well. I would encourage anybody who's interested in a career in the military to pursue that in any case, and then pursue a position with the Royal Engineers if they're specifically interested in engineering. And then both the military would find good use for you, I'm sure. And then sort of once you come out of the services, then you would be able to find suitable employment as well. It's the skills that you get in engineering from the services are very transferable into the marketplace. Lots of employers like using engineers with a military background.
Fantastic. That's very clear, Wesley. Thank you very much. Back to your presentation, guys. Thank you.
Pleasure. So, health and safety. So, this is a key factor for working in the office and on construction sites. So if you're working in the electrical industry, you need to be affiliated with the electrical certification scheme. This is to do with health and safety. Now, I was going to take you to the ECS card scheme here, but if you get the presentation, you can see, you follow this link through yourself, and you'll see that there are the ways of applying for this electrical certification scheme card. So the contexts in which you may work covered by the ECS scheme. So the ECS scheme will cover you as an apprentice and a trainee. It will cover you in electrotechnical roles. So that would be something such as an electrician or an electrical supervisor, or it covers you in electrotechnical roles. In management, so if you want a management role, you can have that as well. LV jointers, that's low voltage jointer. That's people who do usually do underground cable joints for in the roads and highways and that sort of thing. Data comms, comms engineers doing all of the fiber optics, sort of Cat5, Cat6 connections for communication centers, data centers, that type of thing. Fire detection and alarm systems, emergency. So fire detection and alarm system, that's fire alarms, essentially. Fire alarms, fire detection. Emergency and security systems, so emergency lighting, battery backed power, and security systems, so burglar alarms on the sort of on one level, but more broadly access control as well, so getting access into buildings. And related disciplines can be academic, or consultants, more people who don't actually get involved so much in the actual workings of the construction site, but nevertheless need to be able to gain access to those construction sites. Would anyone like to ask a question about one of these roles? Now I'm going to push this back so you can look at these roles.
Again, you can type answers to the questions in the live event Q&A. Sorry, Philippa.
I was going to say thank you for explaining what an LV jointer was. Yeah. And why is it jointer rather than joiner?
It's a jointer, so it's because you're making a joint. So yeah, it's a good question. I suppose a joiner would normally be somebody who works with wood, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So a jointer is, but it's they're usually splicing cables. So it's quite a it's a specialist role, because you have to ensure that the connection is tight and solid, and you have to know what you're doing. It's like lots of things in engineering. It's about it's very belts and braces, digging holes and connecting a cable together in a particular what would you call it? Sort of you have a sort of like a box that you connect it into, but it's sealed, and you pour a compound which comes into it also, so it's completely sealed, so you have no room for any leakages and that sort of thing. Yeah.
I've got some questions coming through. I think what's quite interesting about them is how they are relevant to the current times that we are living in. So I've got some questions about sort of how you feel that this current pandemic, will it affect some of these roles long term? And another question similarly, is progressing into these types of roles currently, is it available or is it affected by the pandemic? So an immediate sort of pandemic impact on these types of roles and as a career choice, and a long-term potentially impact. Those are some of the questions that have come through.
So we're looking at short-term and long-term implications with regards to the pandemic. Yes,
that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say that, in my opinion, any guidance on the pandemic and going into work from that, the best place to look at is the Health and Safety Executive's website, which has daily updates. The guidelines that I can see at the moment is that we're encouraged to work from home or to stay at home where we can. Where it's not where we need to go into work, we're encouraged to observe social distancing and to avoid public transport. So in terms of how that would affect our long-term and short-term opportunities to gain and to find work, yes, I mean, I've heard of interviews being taken place remotely using forums such as Skype or Zoom or Microsoft Teams, as we are here with this presentation, and I've heard of people, you know, gaining employment. The pandemic is going to finish, and sort of once we get through that process, then things, you know, there will be a requirement for employers to carry out risk assessments based on how people will work, and providing we adhere to the strict instructions provided by those risk assessments, then we should be safe. But it really is up to the individual to take responsibility for their own safety and to take responsibility for their own access to opportunity. All of these positions that we're looking at here, the requirement for these roles will all remain, certainly in the sort of, you know, in the short to near to long-term future, as far as I can see.
Fantastic. That's a very clear answer. Thanks, Wesley.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and any questions specifically with regards to these particular roles? If not, I'll move on.
No, those were the questions that we had. Thanks.
Okay, that's great. I hope that was helpful. So the type of electrical work carried out by councils. So council buildings can be divided into corporate properties and housing. These buildings are worked and lived in and need to be maintained. Larger corporate buildings typically have electrical systems. Now, a corporate building could be a town hall or another sort of council type building. An electrical distribution system. So the type of electrical systems they have are things such as an electrical distribution system for standard electrics, for lighting and power. An electrical distribution system for mechanical services. So that could be boosted water, that sort of thing. A backup generator and uninterruptible power supply for essential services. So essential services are lifts, for example, are essential services. So in the event of a power failure, you still need to have power to your lift. So there'll be a generator service to back that up. So water mains, security access control systems, fire alarm systems, that sort of thing. So again, in the event of a power failure, these essential services still need to work. Emergency battery and generator backed power and lighting. These are the sort of things that we look after. Residential buildings typically have smaller electrical systems consisting of electrical distribution for communal lighting and power, door entry systems, electrical supplies to lifts. Now these are considered non-essential, that we don't have battery, we don't have emergency backup to residential lifts. Electrical supplies to dwellings, so all of the electrical supply that goes up to your flat if you live in a flat. And electrical supplies to mechanical services, typically consisting of boosted pumps for water, distributed communal heating. Again, we don't have emergency backup systems for these. We do have emergency backup systems for lighting. So there is luminance safe. We ensure that escape corridors are illuminated. Estate lighting. So council maintains lighting on estates and on public highways. So I'll just go back on that. So what we mean by that is we sort of they're separated. So we have lighting on estates, and we look at it in that way, and there'll be a team who look after lighting on estates, and then we have lighting on public highways, and there will be another team who look after the lighting on public highways. But essentially it's all managed and run by the council. Electrical installations. So excuse me just a second please, I just need to take a quick sip of water. Thank you. So electrical installations are designed, installed, maintained for an expected life cycle. So what I mean by that is you put your electrics in. Can you see me okay?
We can see your presentation at the moment rather than yourself.
Okay, fine. So electrical installations are designed, installed, maintained for an expected life cycle. So what we mean by that is that the electrics are installed, they're fitted, they will run for a while. We have maintenance regimes put in place to test, inspect, and carry and do work based on those recommendations. All systems have a life cycle. They're installed, maintained, decommissioned, and replaced. Electrical design. So the design is carried out by persons who are well versed in the requirements for electrical installations and who can ensure compliance with the exacting requirements of British standards. So the designer must be conversant with British standards and codes of practice. So anybody who wants to work in electrical installations, be it in any of the capacities that we've already spoken about, needs to understand the British standards and codes of practices. To be a designer, not only do you have to understand it, you have to be able to use it and apply it in practice. So professional registration for electrical engineers and building services engineers. So this is where you go from if you decide to go on the route where you're trained as an electrician and you stay working as an electrician, then you would join an organisation. You would have an ECS card, and part of that ECS card will provide you with a professional. It's a professional registration, but it's a trade card rather than a card for an expert, as it were. Whereas the IET, the Institute of Engineering and Technology, and CIBSE, the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers, these are the recognised benchmark standards for professional registration. Okay, and you'd be well advised to have a look at these and to see whether registration yourself now as a student would be appropriate, and certainly by registering with one of these organisations as a student, you're making an excellent cause for your life to move forward with a career in engineering. So let's talk about approved codes of practice. So the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government publishes guidance called approved documents, and these are on ways to meet building regulations. These contain general guidance on the performance expected of materials and building work in order to comply with building regulations. Practical examples and solutions on how to achieve compliance for some of the more common building situations. So these are free. You can get them yourself. Follow this link, and you can have a look at them all. I'm going to just highlight this myself. You're not going to be able to see me doing it, but I want to talk a little bit about this. Just bear with me whilst we open this. Whilst I open this website, it's a shame you can't see it. So what I'm going to do actually is see if I can. No, let's leave it as it is. But the documents themselves, they have they look at structural elements, fire safety. That's document B. Document A is structure. Document B is fire safety. Document C is site preparation, and it's to do with substances which are hazardous to health on site. document D is toxic substances, document E is sound, document F is to do with ventilation, document G is sanitation, document H is drainage and waste. So these are all things that they may not be specific to electrical engineering, but these are all things that as engineers you need to understand. You need to know how to consider these points. Document K is protection from falling and impact. Document L is conservation of fuel and power. Very key, you know, to reach carbon neutral criteria. Electrical safety in the homes is covered by document P, for example. And I'd really like you to have a look at these and to familiarise yourself with them. So let's move on. Let's talk about the contract. So engineers are in the business of doing jobs. So you do a job, you have one job that you do, you then move on to another job. And organisations employ teams to oversee work done by specialist contractors. So this person is nominated the contracts administrator. So you go from being an engineer, you've done all of your training, and now you're interested in delivering a project. You then become a contracts administrator of a contract delivering a project. So the project will have a legally binding contract and a client and a contracts administrator, a designer, and there'll also be a contractor, the person who's delivering the works as well. And there are different roles and responsibilities here. This is the point. I hope that is coming across okay. And an example of a contract used for an electrical contract is called a Model Form 1 or an MF1 contract, and that's actually a contract that's put that the Institute of Engineering Technology use, and they provide that to the marketplace. So I'd like you to have a look when you get this file. Follow the hyperlink that I put into the PowerPoint presentation for the MF1 contracts, and you can find out about that. Electrical installations. So an electrical contracting company will install the new electrical system. Okay, it's very different roles. You have very different defined roles within the industry and how things work, and that's to do with with the markets, essentially, with buying and selling. So an electrical, these businesses will usually be members of one or both of the following organisations. So the Electrical Contractors Association, that's the body who electrical contractors will be affiliated with. You wouldn't want to employ a company, an electrical contracting company, who is not a member of the Electrical Contractors Association or the NIC, EIC, the National Inspection Council. I can't remember. I never remember what the EIC stands for, and I didn't look at it before I joined this. But the NIC EIC is also a very well respected and established body for electrical contractors. Have a look at both of these websites and familiarise yourself with them. There is also on the NIC EIC website, there is an awful lot of information about electrical installations to be found in their guidance notes and so forth for the electrical contracting industry. Have a look at it, understand it. So what are employers looking for? Well, although I do interview people, and what I'm looking for with my colleagues is we're looking for candidates who have understood the job description that they're applying for and are able to provide answers which respond to the criteria set out within the job description. But other than saying that, I would say the best place to look for guidance on what employers are looking for are from these employment consultants. Hayes. They will tell you what employers are looking for. Just Engineers is a website specifically for engineers, and you can find information on there about engineering roles. And I suggest that you have a look at the different roles that are advertised and find what you want to do. Aim high, aim where you want to go, and then work out what it is you need to do to get there. And Indeed, again, it's a website I'm not that familiar with, but they seem to have quite a few positions advertised for electrical engineers. So this is an example from a real job advert, and I thought I'd put this in here. It's for an operations engineering technician, and it sets out key duties and responsibilities. And I thought this is very good. It's if you have a look through this quickly, so you've got these points here. So key duties and responsibilities, there's that aspect there, and then there's the criteria set out here. So in an interview, if you were to be going for this role, you would need to be able to understand these points, understand how to deliver on those points. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have experience in doing this. What it means is that you have to understand where to get the information from. So it's about attitude. Employers want people that who are keen, who are enthusiastic, who are prepared to go the extra mile in order to inform themselves to be able to provide that service that they've promised to provide to their employer when they sign that employment contract. So the key duties and responsibilities, and then they're saying here what your expertise is. Again, you need to be able to do this, but you don't necessarily have to have experience of it, but you need to be able to demonstrate that you're able to, for example, determine the cause of faults in electrical plant and equipment. So that might just be that you understand how to operate a multimeter. So what's your needs, your required qualifications? Again, they're saying here, all you need to do this role are 3 GCSEs. But what you really need are personal qualities for this role. So you need to have a genuine passion for engineering. So that might be that you strip out, you've taken apart the old, a lawnmower engine, for example, or something bigger. Or in your spare time, you volunteer at a museum which has an old steam engine or something in it. You work it out. Work out where your opportunities lie. Again, here they're saying that apprentices will develop their experience and knowledge throughout their apprenticeship, and are expected to initially bring a willingness and enthusiasm to learn from the experiences and opportunities presented to them throughout the course of their time with the company. Okay. Any more questions?
There haven't been any questions at this stage, no. But I suppose if this is the last part of your presentation, then we can open it up to questions. Is that right?
Yes, please.
Sure. So if anyone has any questions regarding any of, I suppose, any part of the presentation to date, or developing a career in this sector, or then please do type that in the Q&A. I will read those out to Wesley for us to pick up.
Well, whilst you're waiting, I've got a couple of questions for Wesley. So one of them I had was, what inspired you in particular to get into electrical engineering?
Okay. So that's a good question. To be honest, initially it was an opportunity. Yeah, so it was an opportunity, and once I'd started on that journey, it developed through from there. So what I found is that the industry sort of picked me, and once I started to make courses, like going to college, for example, and then applying for a role as an apprentice, that it just sort of carried on from there. So yeah.
Are you able to tell us a little bit about your kind of everyday at work? What kind of things you do?
Well, mainly what I do is solve practical day-to-day problems by finding solutions and communicating with people.
Have you enjoyed your career? Is one of the questions coming through here. Very interesting one, I thought.
Well, that is a good ups and downs. I think how you enjoy your life is about how you deal with your day-to-day problems. So rather than looking at challenges, if you like, as something which you can sort of defeat me, I always look at them as opportunities to develop and grow and to learn something new.
Fantastic. Okay. This is a question sort of maybe more, I don't know, actually, for either Philip or you, Wesley, to either of you to pick up. So what is, in your opinion, is the best pathway to get into this industry with a BTech qualification?
So a BTech is a level 3, which gives you the opportunity either going into a apprenticeship, a higher apprenticeship at university, or a degree. When you're employing people, Wesley, what qualifications do they come to you with?
Yeah. Okay. So you would need with a BTech on its own would unlikely get you any startup position other than an apprenticeship. You could potentially get an apprenticeship which would offer additional training from a BTech. Other than that, you would need to either look for employed work as an electrician's mate, for example, and to carry out the 236 City and Guilds Part 1 and 2 route, and then look at doing sort of training yourself in that sense, or finding a company who would sponsor you in that way, or to carry, I would say, to carry on and do your do an HNC, HND, BEng type route, and look at specializing through that way. But you really need to have bear in mind that doing a degree, doing academic study on its own, really does need to be supplemented with an understanding of the practical aspect of what the role involves, and that carries a lot of weight. So having,
do you think it'd be worthwhile doing a degree that also has embedded a year in industry in it, so that you would go to university for a couple of years, then you'd work in the industry, then finish your final year? That way you would have had and been employed for a time.
Yes, yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yes. Fantastic. And people there's some questions coming from Eloy here. If they were to work in something like electronics or mechanics, what kind of apprenticeship should they be looking for?
Manufacturing, I would have said, if that's specifically what you're looking for, manufacturing could be one. Another one could be something like access control, so security systems.
Okay.
Or fire systems. Okay.
I think so. You kind of mentioned previously in one of the answers to the questions about ups or downs, and there was some questions about sort of your job satisfaction, which I think is very interesting actually. And there's a follow-up question about what are some of the challenges you've come across in electrical engineering. Furkan is asking.
Mm-hmm. So the question then is to ask for examples of challenges. One of the main challenges I've had. So there are challenges which are sort of fairly straightforward to overcome. So the challenge of for meeting the requirements of a qualification, for example, that's a very straightforward challenge. You have to put the work in, but it's very clear. You have a criteria that's set out. You meet the criteria. You fulfill you fulfill the tasks that are set to you, and then you have a conclusion at the end. Similarly, as well at work, there will be set tasks which are given to you. For example, you might be asked to write a report on the conditions of an existing system, and you would set out there are guidelines on how to write those reports, a technical report. So you could go to the Institute of Engineering Technology's website if you didn't know how to do that, and you could find an example of a report, and you could apply that example to a real a real life situation, so you could meet the requirements of that task. One of the things which is challenging about the workplace is when you have to overcome problems themselves. And one of the key problems I find is getting different when you're working on contracts, on a larger sort of type of contract, and you have to deliver an overall system. You'll find that you'll have different. So, for example, if I had a job where I was looking at putting together an essential services alert system on a building, and that meant that the alert system could only work if the security company and the fire alarm company and the company who were putting together the generators and the backup systems all worked together. And because the system had to communicate together, but because the contracts were let on three different let separately, there was no consistency. There was nobody there pulling the three elements together, and so the aspect of the building itself, as an intelligent building, had to work by being able to draw in essential services supplies and shut down other supplies in the event of there being an alert condition. And so this is an example of communicating and with people. So communicating with people, so that people need to pull together and to work together to have a shared goal. So I suppose the point there is that communication is a key element.
Fantastic. That's it. That's a really good. Sorry, Philippa, go.
Say, what was the biggest project you've worked on?
I worked on a project to build a data center in Canary Wharf called Global Switch. Yeah, that was a £50 million project in about 2001.
Fascinating. I've got sort of, you touched on this a little bit. I think we have time for one more question. It's from Alexandra Dem, who often actually asks good questions. So question is, are you able to get employed without any sort of experience? So this question is about the importance of getting experience. If you decide to go ahead and carry on with your degree rather than go down the apprenticeship route, and after the degree try and find employment, how easy is it to find a job?
Yeah, it really is. It's down to luck and opportunity, being in the right place at the right time. So just keep putting yourself out there.
Fantastic. I think that's all the questions we've had. Wesley, thank you so much for this real in-depth insight into this career pathway and for coming and preparing such an interesting presentation and spending the time. We've had a really large number of students watching this live event, so thank you. It's really much appreciated. Anything you want to say at the end?
Okay, so
not that you need to, just to make sure
I
give you the opportunity.
No, thank you. I'd like to say something. I'd like to give some, in terms of advice to. There's a couple of things actually I'd like to say is to be an engineer. It isn't the ability to know how to do everything that is important, but the ability to know where to go to solve problems. That's what an engineer has to do. Mm-hmm. And I'd also like to say to your students, please, could you understand that your attitude influences you and your environment. and that it's through having a strong resolve to achieve our aims that we are able to transform ourselves and those around us. So by that means, believe in yourself and really, believe in what it is that you want to do, and when there's a wall in front of you, it's what that means is that there's a massive opportunity on the other side of that wall. You just need to find a way of getting over it or through it or something,
Fantastic. Very, 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 very wise and inspirational and much appreciated again. Thank you very much again, Wesley, for that. I am switching over you, Philippa, to just maybe talk through briefly about next week, which is the final week before we break up for half term.
Sorry, you need to remind me what it is.
Well, I assumed that you're better prepared than I was, because I'm not prepared for this question either.
I'll be emailing it out to everyone.
Fantastic. What's your emails?
Please, as always, read your emails.
As always, read your emails. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to everyone who was asking all the very interesting and insightful questions. Thank you to Philippa, and once again, wonderful thank you to Wesley for joining us today. Have a good rest of the week. Thanks.